That's right. And again, this is what the American public needs to know. I find it fascinating, yet not surprising, that Governor Walz didn't answer the questions the other night about abortion through the 9th month of pregnancy. NPR even did some fact checking and shared that this week, that is correct. Under Minnesota law, abortion is not restricted throughout any month of pregnancy.
So the discussion around abortion laws have become increasingly complex and contentious, especially in light of recent legislative changes like those in Minnesota. This complexity is exacerbated by misleading narratives put forth by public officials such as Tim Walz and Kamala Harris, who have misrepresented the real impact of these laws. Today, I want to shed some light on the truth behind these abortion bills and why they should be a matter of grave concern, particularly for those who advocate for the sanctity of life. Tim Walz signed a bill in Minnesota that effectively removed certain protections for infants who survive abortion attempts. During a recent debate, instead of clearly addressing the core question about late-term abortions, Walz deflected by stating, "In Minnesota, we restored Roe v. Wade." This statement glossed over a significant aspect of the law that permits abortions up to the 9th month and even fails to provide mandatory life-saving care for infants who survive an abortion.
Abortion is legal throughout pregnancy in Minnesota. There is no ban or limit on abortion in Minnesota based on how far along in a pregnancy you are. You signed the bill that makes it legal through all 9 months. Is that a position you think Democrats should advocate for nationally?
Look, the vice president and I have been clear. The restoration of Roe versus Wade is what we're asking for.
But that law goes far beyond Roe v. Wade.
To make her own choice. The law is very clear. It does not change that. That has been debunked on every occasion.
But wait. Let's agree. What you signed is there's not a single limit through 9 months of pregnancy. Roe had a trimester framework that did have limits through the pregnancy. The Minnesota law does not have that.
This puts the decision with the woman and her healthcare providers.
To put it into plain terms, what was passed in Minnesota goes far beyond restoring Roe v. Wade. The law includes provisions that allow doctors to provide what is termed comfort care instead of active medical treatment for babies who survive an abortion. But what is comfort care? What is it in this context? According to legal experts and pro-life advocates, it is essentially a euphemism for neglect, choosing not to treat these infants, allowing them to die without attempting to save their lives. Comfort care is not about the best interest of these babies. It is a passive approach that avoids providing potentially life-saving interventions. To illustrate the severity of this, Melissa Oden, the founder and director of Abortion Survivors Network, shared her own story. It's a little touchy.
You survived an abortion and luckily got care, and you're sitting here with us today. What happens to babies that survive abortions in the state of Minnesota versus other states that don't have these brutal laws?
There are states, very few states, that identify and report the number of babies like me who survive abortions, but we had in 10 different states 270 babies who survived abortions. And when you look at that Minnesota report from 2021, 5 babies survived and not a single one of them were provided medical care, Rachel. This is a travesty.
So they use this word, and it just makes me sick to my stomach. It's called comfort care. Why don't you explain to our viewers what comfort care means?
Yeah, I was thinking about that this morning. It reminds me so much of when then Senator Obama was discussing that in the state of Illinois. My friend, Jill Stanek, a nurse, held a baby like me who had survived an abortion. And the response to that baby not being provided medical care and the uproar when she brought it out to the public was that they would create a quote unquote comfort care room. No one would want this for their child, their grandchild, anyone they know and love. Why are they willing to do this to babies time and time again? And why are they hiding the truth from the American public?
She is living proof of the potential for survival if adequate care is provided and given Yet under Minnesota's current law, babies like her are being denied even a chance to live. In 2021, Minnesota reported that 5 babies survived abortion attempts, but no comprehensive efforts were made to ensure their survival. These are not just numbers. These are humans whose lives were disregarded. The situation in Minnesota is not isolated. NPR fact-checked and confirmed that the state laws allow abortion at any point during the pregnancy without specific restrictions. This lack of restriction opens up the possibility for abortions well into the 3rd trimester, a practice comparable to those found in countries with some of the least restrictive abortion laws, like China. Now, Kamala Harris and Tim Walz have consistently used misleading language to present these bills as necessary measures for women's health and reproductive rights.
States like Georgia force women to cross the border, and then we have a death of Amber Thurman. That's what we'll do when we're elected.
But to be clear, the Minnesota law is
women.
far beyond Roe v. Wade. And about the Amber Thurman case in Georgia, her family has, and it's tragic, she is a young mother who left behind a young son. But what her family has said is it was a complication from an abortion pill that she received, and she didn't get proper care when she went to a Georgia hospital, which had multiple opportunities to intervene there. Her own attorney, the family's attorney, says it wasn't the Georgia law, it was the hospitals. What he claims is malpractice, not treating her when she clearly showed up in distress and still had the byproducts of her pregnancy because of that rare complication from the abortion pill. So just to be clear on the Georgia law and how her family and her attorney sees it.
However, what they have failed to admit is that these laws also permit practices that directly involve ending the life of a fully viable infant who, under different circumstances, would receive neonatal intensive care, which means these babies are born alive. This is not just about ideology, it's about telling the truth. Pro-life advocates are rightfully concerned because the truth is being hidden behind a veil of euphemisms, phrases like comfort care and women's reproductive rights. These terms sound compassionate, but are, in fact, used to obscure the harsh reality that these laws often condone the withholding of life-saving care for newborns. Now, it is essential to consider why politicians like Tim Walz and Kamala Harris avoid discussing these details openly. If these policies are truly just, then why not stand on them without hesitation? The truth is that the broader public, once aware of what is actually happening, may not be as supportive. When we hear that babies are left without care, that so-called comfort care is simply letting a newborn die, we are moved not by politics, but by our basic humanity. Now, furthermore, allowing such practices contributes to the erosion of culture that values life. The pro-life movement stands against the idea of terminating life at any stage, including after birth, because every life, even the most vulnerable, deserves protection. The fact that surviving infants are not guaranteed medical care should prompt serious moral reflection from all of us. It's not enough to claim to stand for choice if that choice comes at the cost of a newborn's life. Now, there is an even deeper concern here: the promotion of a victimhood mentality that erodes personal accountability. This mentality encourages people to see systematic barriers where personal agency could be prioritized. In the context of these abortion laws, the narrative of victimhood of women needing unrestricted access to abortions, even up to the 9th month, removes the focus from the empowerment that comes with responsibility. When we allow the discourse to shift to the extent that an infant's life can be terminated without consequence, we are losing the fundamental respect for human dignity. Remember, the healthcare industry is anti-health. If you are healthy, they can't make money. The problem is that the healthcare industry disguises virtue signaling like the phrases women's rights, women's health, my body, my choice, as a means to funding their industry. They don't care about your body or your choices. They care about turning a profit. Now let me remind you, if the government really, truly cared about your welfare, do you think they'd force the individuals and families that are struggling to survive or have lost their lives during this week's tragedy in North Carolina and neighboring states to fill out an application for a despicable and miserly $750 after they lost their homes and people losing their lives? Get the heck out of here with that. The government wants to turn a profit, not protect lives. That's no different with abortions. They don't care about women's rights. They care about the industry they created from feeble-minded women who were unfortunately manipulated into this delirious world of abortions for all. Tim Walz and Kamala Harris has failed to tell the truth about the implications of these abortion laws. They failed to admit that these laws do not just protect women's health, they also pave the way for practices that result in the termination of infants who have survived an abortion. This is not empowerment that anyone should stand for. It is a dangerous dismissal of innocent lives. We must continue to tell these stories, like Melissa Oden's, to remind the public of the value of every life and the need for laws to protect the most vulnerable among us.